All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Early College and Career Post-Secondary Program, Awareness Program presented by Homewood-Flossmoor High School and our guidance departments. So good evening again. I am Dawn Edwards, one of the school counselors at HF and your host for this evening. And we have some wonderful presenters, great presenters, who are here to share their expertise, as the whole purpose of this program is to help booster our 9th and 10th graders as soon as they enter high school to make intentional choices about academics and extracurricular activities to help prepare them for life after HF. And of course, we welcome our upperclassmen, our 11th and 12th graders as well. We just want to help students as early as possible make those intentional choices and help them to put a plan in place. So without further ado, I will introduce our wonderful panel. First, Mrs. Courtney Alexander will do the honors on our career info tonight. Mrs. Alexander is a veteran teacher at HF and teaches in our career and technical department, and she will give you more details about her background. Also, we have Mr. Mike Melender, who is the Midwest Regional Enrollment Manager at the University of Toledo. Now, we'll also let him expound on his title and what he does and what that means. Also, my wonderful colleagues, HF post-secondary consultants, Mr. Brad Kane, whose Alpha Slice for students is A through K, and Mr. Kevin Coy is L through Z. And Mr. Coy, he may or may not jump in or jump out with us. He is actually at his son's game, and he's there supporting him, and he's here supporting us as well. So we appreciate Mr. Coy for doing that. And we also want to thank you, parents and students, for joining us tonight. Let's start the evening with Mr. Mike Melender. He's going to go first, and then we'll also take some questions from you. So if you could just please put those in the chat if you have any questions, and he will answer those. All right. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Melender, and I work for the University of Toledo, which is in Ohio. It's about 4 hours away from HF. So I actually live in suburban Chicago. So I am based in the western suburbs. I've been in college admissions. I think this is my 18th year. So I have known most of the people on your staff for quite some time. And I've gone through this a couple times as a parent as well. So I have two kids. My son is 22. He's in the first year of a grad school program, and I have a daughter who's 18. She's a college freshman. So I'm kind of coming at this from two sides of it. So the counselor who's been around for a little while and the dad who's done this twice. So I have been in your exact spot watching presentations and webinars and things like that as a parent as well. So some of the things that that I like to stress are, it is not too early to begin thinking about college if that's on your radar, looking at 2-year schools, looking at 4-year schools. It's never too early to start thinking about this stuff. So I think one thing that is good to look at is sort of the things that the college admission offices are looking for when they start looking at students with their college application. So some of the parts of the things that they're going to look for are, and I'm going to put these probably in, I think most people would agree this is sort of the order of importance of them. So the most important thing that we're going to look at is the student's transcript. So that has the grades. Did a student take honors classes? Did they take some AP classes? How much math? How much science? How much world language? Things like that. So that really tells the whole story about what you did academically in the classroom during your whole time in high school. So that's what most schools that's the primary thing that a college or university will look at. The next most important thing, and there's a caveat to this, the next most important thing is test scores. So all the juniors just just took the SAT, so they were super excited to do that. Probably not, but it's a good thing. So the SAT or the ACT, and so that's probably the next most important thing. So the caveat is that there are increasingly a number of colleges and universities that don't use ACT or SATs for the admissions process or the scholarship process. Some do just for admissions and some do it for scholarship. Like at my university, we don't use them at all. So if a school does use them, it's probably the second most important thing. I think the third in this list is going to be a student's essay or personal statement, whatever the school calls it. It is the student's opportunity to talk a little bit more about themselves and to talk about the things that won't appear anywhere else in their application. It is their voice. It is their way to talk about what is important to them in this process and what they're looking for in a school. I think fourth on that list is going to be probably letters of recommendation, and those can come from teachers, from counselors, from community leaders. There's a variety of ways people get letters of recommendation, and I think a good way to look at that is that sort of a neutral third-party endorsement that a student can create a relationship with one of their teachers who really can talk about their work ethic. I think that's the most important thing, is that if you really have to put in a little bit of extra work in the classroom and that teacher can talk about that, say, this student had like a C and they weren't doing that well, and their grade was maybe even going to go down, and they decided to get some extra help to put in the extra time, and they raised their grade, even if you get it into the B range, but you get it from a grade you're not happy with and you can get it into the B range. A teacher talking about that kind of dedication and work ethic is going to be an important person to ask for a recommendation letter. And then lastly, I think on that list of 5 is going to be the activities list or the resume, whatever the school calls it. So some colleges ask for your activities list, some ask for a resume, and I think Ms. Alexander is going to cover this in a little bit. But I think sometimes there's a perception that students need to get involved in as many things as they can. And I think that's challenging for students, because when I look at a student's application, if I see that they're involved in 6, 8, 10 different student organizations, and it's just more that they're in the organization, I don't know that truly looks as good as a student who is in maybe 2 or 3 things, but have a progressive leadership role within that organization. So if there's something, if you're a rising sophomore or a rising junior, and there's something you really are passionate about, and you've tried a little bit of everything, and you're in 6 or 8 different things right now, maybe trim it down to 2 or 3 that you're most passionate about, and you'll want to dedicate as much time, effort, and energy into those things so that you can have a leadership role of some sort in that organization. I think that looks really good for colleges, whether it's at school, whether it's in your community, if it is a community center or something with church or anything like that. Those all count, because as I started at the beginning with your transcript, I can see what you're doing in the classroom. If you take an ACT or an SAT, if my school asked for your score, I can see what sort of score you got. I've read your essay, so I've sort of heard your voice come through in the essay. And then I read your teacher's recommendation letter, and then I see what you do outside of the classroom. And if you are a student, if you're one of the older students in your family and you have younger siblings and you're responsible for taking care of them, that's great. If you have a part-time job, that looks good. Anything you can do outside of the classroom to sort of, if you're an athlete, if you're in music, theater, any of those things, I think find what you're most passionate about and really try to develop leadership within that organization. And that will look better once you start applying to college early in your senior year. So mid-September-ish of your senior year is kind of when you're going to start applying for schools. Visiting. It's never too early to visit a college campus. I don't know that you really need to do the big all-day visit on a college campus quite yet. If you are going somewhere for a wedding, a family reunion, a little vacation, some sort of a getaway, and you have the opportunity to go visit a college, typically the tours take, like our tour takes, there's a 30-minute presentation and a 90-minute walking tour of campus. So 2 hours is the entire visit experience for the daily tour that we do Monday through Saturday. So you have an opportunity to go visit some schools. Even if you had the opportunity just to do a little bit of a drive-through, that's okay too. If you were on the way to something and you're like, you know what, we're going downtown, University of Illinois Chicago is right there, let's take a look. We're very lucky in where we live in the greater Chicagoland area that within 2 hours of us in a multitude of directions, there are a lot of colleges and universities. So even if those don't become the ones you end up applying to, if you want to see what 2 or 3 different Big Ten universities look like, you can. If you want to see what a small college looks like, there's a bunch of small colleges around. If you want to find some mid-sized schools, you can find them in our area. So we're pretty lucky in that regard that people where we live, we can go see a lot of schools. So when you do go visit, my recommendation, if you have just a tiny bit of time, parking the car, getting out, walking around for 20 minutes, totally fine. But if you have the chance to do the tour, do the tour. And students, ask the tour guides who are students the questions you want the answers to. So when it's a group presentation for all of the parents, they will give all of the official answers that they are supposed to give. And we as an admissions staff appreciate that they give those answers. But if you want the real talk kind of answer from a student, just ask them, take them aside after the tour and be like, hey, can I ask you about this? And ask, and they will happily tell you. College students love talking about their colleges. So definitely do that because it's just a very different experience. So don't ask kind of those generic questions that you can find the answers on the website. If you have the opportunity, I would ask about maybe some of their favorite traditions or what it is that they do outside of the classroom. Because a psychology major at UIC and a psychology major at St. X or a psychology major at DePaul, in the classroom, pretty similar experience. But I think it's going to be what they do outside of the classroom that sort of sets that university apart and will sort of differentiate it for students. So colleges can be a very different experience. It's a lot of time management is sort of the biggest pitfall, I think, for people when they go off to college. So if you have friends that are in college now, ask them what mistakes they made their first semester of college, because we all make them. And I think asking people who went to HF even, hey, when you went off to XYZ University, like, what did you not know that you wish you had known before you went there? That kind of stuff. So you can also ask the tour guides on college tours, you know, what do you wish you had known before you came here? And they'll definitely give you some tips on that. You know, so circling back to sort of my first thing that I talked about with grades, I think that sometimes students either have a rougher freshman year, sophomore year, they start to turn it around, junior year. And when you have kind of that upward grade trend, that definitely looks good for a college that not everybody starts off, especially at a bigger high school like yours, not everybody starts off with straight A's that first semester. It's tough getting adjusted coming from middle school. I get it. But your grades are gonna be super important. So should you take every honors class and every AP class you can? I would say no. If you can handle the workload, sure. If you're gonna get A's in all of those classes, fantastic. But if you're not, if that's too much of a challenge for you, I think the term that we like to say is that you appropriately challenge yourself. If you can definitely get a B, and with enough hard work, you can get an A in a class, and it's an honors class, perfect. If an honors class, you get an A and it was like, I hardly did any work and I got an A, well, then an AP class is probably going to be more your speed. So I think that appropriately challenging yourself is the most important thing, because what we don't want to see, and you guys are very lucky at your high school, you have fantastic school counselors, you have the 2 college consultants that are going to help guide you through this whole process. Utilize the staff at your school, meet with your counselor, ask these questions. They will talk to you about this. And if it looks like you are overdoing it in your academic course load, and someone says that to you, if Ms. Edwards says like, hey, 17 AP classes might be too much for you to handle, so listen to her advice. So your counselors, they get paid to help you. That's why they're there. And then when you start looking a little deeper at the colleges and universities you're thinking about applying to, having Mr. Coy and Mr. Kane in the building, they have each been to hundreds of colleges and universities. That's why they're there. So you have great resources to use. So take advantage of them if you can. So, you know, it's really easy to sign up for a college visit. If you go onto most school websites, it's right on the homepage. Here, let's see. Hopefully this works for me. I will share my screen quickly and I'll show you how easy it is to navigate to sign up for a visit. So let's see. Hopefully you are seeing my homepage. So at the University of Toledo, right at the top, if you just click visit, scroll down a little bit, schedule your visit now, an in-person tour. You can schedule a visit. If we were so excited we wanted to go to Toledo, Ohio this coming Monday, we would click the 25th. There's a 10 o'clock and a 2:30. We'll pick the 10 o'clock. You can fill all your information in and then just submit it, and then you are registered. That is the process. You can bring guests with you. A lot of schools will have the ability to add on extra sessions. So if you wanted to do a College of Nursing, or you wanted to do a College of Engineering session in addition to just the regular campus visit, you're definitely able to do those at a lot of schools. So the nice thing is that there is an assigned admissions person like me for HF at every single college in the United States. If it's a really far away school that doesn't have a huge presence in Illinois, like, you know, I live here, so I actually was, when was I on campus? Last Friday. I was on campus at HF last Friday. Yeah, for an event. So I can just drive down. It's really easy for me. I live 35 minutes away. But you know, if it's a school like on the West Coast, like UCLA or something like that, they don't have a person that comes here very often, but they do have someone in their office who is assigned to Illinois. So all the Illinois high school students, that is who they work with. So find that person. There's usually a map on everyone's admissions website that says meet our counselor. I'm going to guess that Mr. Coy and Mr. Kane have that information available, like in Naviance, for students. So you definitely can access and just ask the questions. Say, hey, I'm interested in the University of blank. Find that person, shoot them an email, and just ask your question and kind of get that ball rolling. So I think I'll end on this. You have, I mentioned it a minute ago, you have a great group of school counselors that help you with all of your course selection, all your academic stuff. And you have 2 fantastic college consultants that are there for you to help you with this process and kind of give you a little bit of guidance. And then your school hosts one of the best college fairs in the entire Chicagoland area. It is in the field house. It's awesome. There's Mr. Kane, are there 200-ish colleges that come? All right, 200 or so colleges that show up. We're all there. We have stacks of brochures for you. There's this cool little scanning tool where you can register all your information and get a QR code We scan your QR code at the fair. When you go to the college fair, very often I see this all the time, is families just sort of walk up and down and then they pick one school and they get a book. And then they walk for 20 more minutes and decide, okay, I'm going to get a book from that one school. Don't do that. If you don't want to stand and talk to the rep, you literally can walk up and grab a book off their table and go, thank you, and take a book and no one will be offended. Or you can take a book and say, hey, could you scan my information? They'll scan it, takes 35 seconds, walk on. So if you want to stop and talk about residence life and football games and like whatever you want to talk about at that university, we're happy to talk about that stuff. But you should walk out with a big stack of these books so that you can take them all home, make a yes and a no pile, recycle the no's, revisit the yeses, and decide where you might want to go visit. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. I did
Sure.
want to ask, there's a question that has come up just about, and we talk about this a lot in the guidance office as well, just kind of building resilience and character, so that you can't really find on the transcript.
Sure.
Those kinds of things. And when kids go off to college, that's a skill that they need to survive. So what would you say about that?
I think that I know that this comes up with, so for students who apply using the Common Application, there is a question on the Common App that talks about, can you talk about a time where you faced some adversity, how you overcame the adversity, and what you learned from it?
Okay.
What happens a lot of times is students talk a long time about the adversity, whatever it is. A lot of times it's the torn ACL and losing out on their senior season of basketball or whatever it is.
Wow.
How you overcame it, but ultimately it's what you learned from it. That's the crux of that question. So make sure that you focus on what you learned from that experience, because as Ms. Edwards talks about, the reason that question is asked is that when you are a college freshman and you're not somewhere tropical like she is right now, and you are on a snowy Midwestern college campus, it's November, you're a little homesick, maybe you go somewhere that the football team has lost a lot of their games, not my school, has lost a lot of their games, your roommate leaves their stinky socks on the floor and things just are not going well. We want to know that you have faced some level of adversity in your past. You have found a way to overcome it and you learned something from it so that you can take what you learned in high school and then apply that knowledge to that situation in college. So that is the point. So don't be afraid to try new things and fail. It's okay. Like if you say, I'm going to try for the lead in the musical, and we find out that Mr. Kane cannot sing, that will not go well. He will not get the lead in the musical. That's okay. They need people to do other things to make that a successful production. So learn from adversity. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to fail. Try new things. It's a very safe space. When you are in high school, in that high school environment, it's a very safe space. When you go to college, it's also a very safe space to make these mistakes. So make the mistakes and then learn from them so that you can have a little, the word you mentioned, resiliency, right? A little bit of grit. It will help you because not everything is perfect. And not everyone is a big baseball fan, but it's funny, if you hit 35% of the pitches thrown to you, if you get a base hit 35% of the time, you will be the most valuable player in the league with a 35% success rate. If you bat 350, you will win the MVP.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Right. And so that means you got out 65% of the time and you're the best player in the league. So it's okay. Don't be afraid to fail.
Thank you, Mike.
Welcome.
When you put it that way, it sounds doable.
Yeah,
so
go play golf one time. You'll see how anyone, Mr. Kane can tell you, it's not the easiest thing in the world to go do. So
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I don't know if Kane, did you want to jump in, and did you have anything you wanted to add to any of that?
No, I first of all, would say thanks to Mike. You did a great job. And, Kevin and I talk a lot, and you'll hear some of the exact same messages. But the thing that I like about having Mike here is that he puts a different twist on those things. I would never talk about or would have thought to talk about 350 batting average. But yes, I think getting involved, not over involved, making sure. The only different I would have said, Mike, and you may or may not agree, is I would have maybe flipped the test score with the essay right now, just right now, right? And because there's such
in this current environment, I agree.
somewhere around 78% of college universities are that test optional piece. So the smaller number of schools that are actually looking at those test scores, we really try to put a big emphasis on that essay, that personal statement. Actually, at Homewood-Flossmoor High School, when they hit their senior year, the first assignment in that English class is to write a college essay. And I will speak for Kevin and, of course, for myself. I am more than happy to give students feedback on essays, personal statements. I've been reading them almost actually over 20 years now, from the college admission side and the high school side combined. I have a pretty good handle on content is good. Or maybe we need to adjust things, or Mike, like you mentioned, maybe focus a little bit more in a specific area about what you're writing about. But what I do not do is I do not do English grammar, punctuation. I'm not an English teacher, and your family does not want me helping you with that. That's why we have those English teachers that are there. So in terms of putting a little bit more emphasis on that essay and their writing ability, it is that way to showcase a student, on top of just who you are as a grade point average or a test score. So thanks again, Mike. Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy to help.
Would this trend be reversed, like with the test scores? Can they do that? Can they go back to?
Technically, Mike, I don't know if you want to talk about, yes, they can.
I think some schools are. I think there have been schools that for 10 or 12 years have not asked for test scores. And there's a website. It is fairtest.org, FAIRTEST.org, that will show you who in the world of college admissions is test optional and who is not. But a lot of schools, we decided pre-pandemic to do away with it. A lot of schools, because of the pandemic, and high schools, like the class of 21 had a really challenging time even finding a test they could take. It was almost impossible to take a test. So, so a lot of schools did away with it, but they said, we're going to do like a 3-year trial period to see what happens. I think half will go back to it and half will stay test free. So, or test optional. So.
Gotcha. Okay, Mike, I know you have to run, but thank you so much. We appreciate all your help and your expertise. You've been around HF the last 2 weeks, like a lot lately.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I even brought my Viking Red cup to drink from. So, all right.
We appreciate
bye, everybody.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we are now going to move over to Mrs. Courtney Alexander. She is going to bring up our career and kind of getting ready for the summer, in case any of our 9th and 10th graders, and of course upperclassmen, are looking for a job, looking for the first job. I know I've gotten calls about that and emails from parents. So take it away, Ms. Alexander.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen real quick first, and then I'll get into all right. So today, as Ms. Edwards spoke of, I will be presenting on early college and career readiness, which is definitely my passion. I have been at HF for 18 years now, 21 years in education. So just a little bit about me. I am the Career Internship and Employment Coordinator. So it's basically our work study program that I coordinate with our senior students. They come to class part of the day, and then they have a release period for their work experience. And I always use the word work experience because that can fall into a multitude of different experiences, from volunteering to internships to actually having a paid part-time job, which I'll definitely get more information to you about that. Along with what Mike was stating, I'm also the SAT ACT coordinator at the school. So I'm very familiar with the testing now. Our numbers have shifted back to the uptick now as we are coming out of our phases of the pandemic. So we do have a lot more students that are registering for our testing here at the school. So if there are any questions about testing, I can definitely answer those as far as registration and how to prepare for our testing that we have on the weekends. And I wear a multitude of hats. So I'm also the junior class sponsor here at the school. So getting ready for prom and all things, wrapping up the school year. So a lot going on, but I'm just excited to be here to talk to you all about just getting ready for that next step. And it's never, ever, ever too early to start that. I always tell my freshman students to start now. As Mike mentioned, getting involved, but not overdoing it. We really want to see students that are taking on those leadership roles so that they can know what it's like to lead an organization or to lead an activity and actually make decisions as well. So to jump right in, some of the tips I'm going to talk about today. First, starting off is our resume writing and what that looks like for a high school student with barely any experience. And also talking about volunteering and our part-time jobs and definitely dressing for success. I know that's a loose term nowadays, but there are still some standards that need to be upheld in the workplace. And then talking a little bit about emailing and texting etiquette. So to start off, as far as resume writing, I'm not going to go deep into like how to bullet point it and how the formatting should be, but just to give you an idea of the different types of resumes that are acceptable in the workplace, and also what really would be a good resume for you. So the three different types of resumes are, the first one is the chronological, which is the most used resume by a lot of people because it focuses on your work experience. And it's always reverse chronological because it starts with your most important or your last date that you have worked. So if you're currently working or currently volunteering, you would start with that work experience first. And I use the word working loosely because work could look at a different way for everybody. So it could be you volunteering, you babysitting, you tutoring someone on the weekends, you helping at a church outing, or working with your organization. So don't always think of it as being just a paid job. As far as experience, you can have experience in literally everything that you are a part of. The other type of resume is functional, which focuses on your skills. So if you are a great communicator, if you are really good at organizing, if you're good at software, if you're good at any type of computer skills, those will be your skills that you can highlight on your functional resume. And then a combination of both is your hybrid of both your work experience and also your skills. So generally, a lot of employers would like to look at that chronological because they like to see what you have done. Not just over a month span, but over a great amount of months, whether it's you babysit every weekend for a family in your neighborhood. Maybe you cut the grass of your neighbors, or if you have that job, seeing how you are sticking with a certain experience over a certain amount of time. So when you look for actually constructing your resume, there are a ton of different templates. So you don't have to start from scratch, which is the great thing. You can start with a few different templates. Google Docs does have a lot of different templates that you can start with, but also Resume Genius is another site that I really like because they construct it very well for you. And I have an example here for you to make it stand out a little bit more for you. So on this one, you can see that everything is laid out in detail for this resume. Now, this person didn't have any type of work experience. They had volunteer experience. So they volunteered at a children's hospital and bullet pointed each role that they took within that experience. They also volunteered at a homeless shelter. So just think about all of the different things that you do over time. Maybe in the summers, you have an ice cream stand, or maybe you work at the pool. Whatever you do, put that on your resume. And you'll notice one thing that I always tell my students is to make sure that it's action packed. So when you are thinking about words to include in your resume, you want it to be action forward, like organized, assisted, process. Those are action words. That shows that you are actually doing something, not I sat and swept the floor. You want to make sure that it's an action-packed resume that you are constructing. They also go into their extracurriculars. Like I said, get involved. Don't overdo it, because if you have your hands in everything, then what's going to happen to your grades? What's going to happen to that balance? So you want to make sure, as Mike stated, definitely pick something that you're passionate about, maybe 2 or 3 organizations or extracurriculars to get involved in that you can continue on throughout your high school career. They also included their awards. It's good to have your academic honors on your resume, or if you receive Student of the Quarter or Student of the Year, or if you receive an award from the Honors Convocation. Definitely include that on your resume. So this is just one of the examples. Of course, there are tons of different templates that you can use to construct your resume. And like I said, that site that I pulled this one from was Resume Genius. So if you want to take a look at Resume Genius, they have a lot of different templates that you can sort through that would fit your actual experience. And like I stated, no experience, don't worry. You can always volunteer. There are a ton of different volunteer experiences right here in HF area. So if you look at, and I'll put this up for you. And all of these links, if you want me to send them to you, feel free to send me an email. I'll have my contact information at the very end, and I can forward all of this information to you. But as you can see, these are all volunteer organizations that are within our area, from our Cancer Support Center to our volunteering at the hospitals to volunteer with Girl Scouts. So there are a ton of different options for you to use in order for you to volunteer. So don't think that, oh, I don't have a job, I don't have any experience. You can start getting that experience even now, working with these different organizations. Now we're going to transition into my favorite topic, dressing for success. And I know we all want to show our creative side, and I am all for it. However, there are still certain standards that need to be met in the workplace, and even when you're volunteering. So I put up the slide of what not to wear. So if it's on this slide, that means you probably shouldn't wear it to the workplace. I know shorts are in, and some of the shorter shorts are in. However, those are things that you reserve when you're on vacation or just around the house. Same thing with the rompers. Toms are actually not considered, Toms, Uggs, gym shoes, those are actually not considered professional wear. A nice loafer, a nice sandal, sure. Any strapless or low cut or cut outs are also not seen as appropriate in the workplace. Leggings, I know they're comfortable. We all wore them during COVID. We got very used to them. However, they are still not appropriate for the workplace. You can still, of course, have your own style and your own flair to what you like to wear. However, just keep it appropriate for that workplace. Of course, some of you may be going into retail, like in Akira, and they want you to dress fashionable. That's totally fine once you get that position though. So as you're going in for the interview, I would say to shy away from those outfits and to have a more polished look when you go in for that interview. Some of the things, and this is totally just a visual, some of the things, you know, if you are wearing certain jewelry, if you're wearing certain hairstyles, that's fine. I'm all for the creativity and the colors of hair and all of that. Just make it look nice and neat. Same thing with your accessories and whether you are wearing pants to an interview or whether you are wearing a dress, a skirt, slacks, whatever it is, just have a nice polished look. And then the last topic I want to hit upon is email and texting etiquette. Now, I get a lot of emails from my students, even up until today. Some of you email at inappropriate hours, like past 9 o'clock at night. You want to make sure that you are keeping in mind that your teachers probably don't stay up to midnight. Maybe you do, but we're usually in the bed. So sending an email at 1, 2, 3 in the morning is not the appropriate time to send that type of correspondence. Along with when you are emailing your teacher, you want to address what the email is about. So maybe you're missing an assignment, maybe you were absent from school, and if they could send the work that needs to be completed. Maybe you need clarification about an assignment. That should all go into your subject line. And always start with a greeting. Don't just start, you didn't put in my assignment, I don't know what to do. You want to greet your teacher, say, good morning, good afternoon, Mrs. Alexander, would you please do you mind sending more information? I'm not quite sure how to complete this assignment. And then close it with a thank you or have a nice day, and just make sure that your name is included. I know a lot of you are sending emails through your phone, but you still can make sure that you are not texting using the text language when you are emailing your teachers, but making sure that it is still appropriate, use the proper grammar, make sure you spell check your words also before you hit send. If you're upset about something, wait a second, read it over. If it's still what you want to say, make sure that you also CC your parents anytime you are sending an email to your teacher, so that your parents are aware of what's going on in class or what you may have had a confusion about, so that if your parents email us, as far as teachers or even your guidance counselor, everyone knows what's going on. So always include them in that CC as well when you are sending your email correspondence. But again, keep in mind that after a certain hour, maybe cut it off at 6 o'clock. Then if you don't hear a response back, then that next morning, I'm sure your teachers will email you right back. I know I'm really good at emailing my students right back, but after a certain time, I have to cut it off because we have to balance our lives as well. So just keep that in mind as far as the timing goes. And then lastly, texting etiquette. Some of you may have like your coaches or your activities director, or even some of your teachers' cell phone, or you may use the Remind app to send messages. But one thing, first and foremost, don't text and drive. So if you have something that is of importance that needs to get to your teachers or even your parents right away, just pull over, send that text, and then continue on. Don't use all caps. That means that you're shouting at someone. So don't use all caps. I know sometimes you may be upset about something, but take a moment, read over it, take the caps off, and then send the message. Absolutely no bullying. I know that we are in a social media area, and I know that all of you are on like Twitter and Snapchat and Instagram and all of those different social media platforms. But one thing that Mike did not mention is that colleges can see that information too. So they can see your online presence, and they see a lot of negative messages or pictures that you have sent. That doesn't go away just because you delete it. It is still in the universe. Okay. So just keep that in mind when you are sending those messages. Keep it appropriate. Okay. Also give time for a response. So especially if you're sending it to an adult, they may be at work at that time, or on another meeting or another call. So give that appropriate time for response, but also be prompt with your response. So if you're asking a question, make sure that you are responding and use appropriate language, especially when you are texting like your boss or texting your manager at work or your coordinator, whoever that person may be. Just make sure that you are using that appropriate language when you are sending that text. So those are my tips for you. I hope that was good information for you. And again, here is my contact information. I'm C. Alexander at hf233.org. Feel free to email me and I can send you all those resources directly to you as well.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Alexander. I wanted to ask, and I see something here too, what would you say about an appropriate email that the student's email address itself?
Yes, absolutely. I always tell my students just to use their HF email anytime they are corresponding with anyone, whether it's an employer, whether it's anyone in the community. Once they leave HF, of course, they do lose that email address. So before they graduate, I always have them just set up one with their first initial last name or first name last name combination, but not like Hello Kitty or I'm the hotgirl.com or any of that. So definitely use an appropriate email address.
Awesome, thank you. And then what would you say, because I know times have changed since I was interviewing for a job and, when I was younger, when I was a teenager, but because everything is electronic now in terms of following up after that interview, students, should they still call or send an email? Definitely a thank you email for the time, but to follow up on the job itself.
Yes,
absolutely. Tell students?
Yes, I always tell my students to send an email immediately afterwards. Usually the employers don't always answer if they call, but definitely they will check an email. So I always tell them to follow up with an email.
Okay. All right, awesome. Those were the questions that I had. I appreciate your time and your expertise. And doesn't look like we have any questions in the chat, so we might be any more leaving early here. And if anybody has any questions, I'm just going to throw it out there. If you want to go ahead and put those in the chat. We still have Mr. Kane here from the college side, and we also have Mrs. Alexander. So I'm going to just wait just a second to see if we have any questions that come up. But again, thank you so much to everybody who has joined us. I think great information. I'm just going to mention again that fairtest.org. Brad, can you just say what that is again?
Sure. Fairtest.org is a website which houses the information about who is test optional and not test optional in terms of the college piece. So as we know, this changes. It seems like it changes daily. It's settled down a little bit since we've started coming back out of COVID, but just a great resource to find out if you're wondering what schools are actually still requiring that and which aren't. So great website. It's something we use almost daily down in our office when these questions come up.
Okay, thank you. And then I, for some reason, I can't advance this, but I brought this up to if any parent needs a work permit for their 15-year-old. If you're 16 and over, you don't need a work permit, but Linda McConaughey in our office, in the guidance counseling office, is the person that you would see or email, and her email is lmcconaughey@hf233.org. .org. And again, I had a slide, but it just doesn't seem to be advancing. I'm stuck here. So, so it's L McConaughey at hf233.org. And so if they need a work permit, she has the information, she has the steps that you need to take in order to get that work permit. And I've had some questions about that too. So if there are no more questions, since I don't see any, I am going to say goodnight and wish everybody a wonderful, happy Easter weekend. And thank you again for joining us. And if you do have any more questions or anything that comes up after this, you can always email me at dedwards@hf233.org. And if you have any questions for Mr. Kane or Mr. Melander that come up, if you send it to me, I will forward the questions on to Mr. Kane or Mrs. Alexander or Mr. Coy. Okay, so thank you all very much and have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.